President Trump says he and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for the coronavirus, what that means for his presidential campaign going forward. Enhancing ballot security, what Governor Greg Abbott is doing to prevent voter fraud related to mail-in ballots, and why his critics say they're speaking out against it. And Halloween is a time for ghouls and goblins, but this year there are new fears when it comes to kids going house to house for candy, what the CDC is recommending.
You're watching Daybreak on 12 News.
We start this morning with the breaking news out of Washington. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump both testing positive for COVID-19. The president confirmed in a tweet overnight. There is no word yet on whether either of them are showing any symptoms at this time. But according to reports, the president's top aide, Hope Hicks, has shown symptoms, and that's where they think they contracted the virus. Good morning, Southeast Texas. Thanks so much for waking up with us on this Friday morning. I'm Tracy Kennick, and we have more on our breaking news from the White House in just a moment. But right now, let's get that weekend forecast with Jeff Gerber.
Looking pretty good, not only for the weekend, but for today as well. We're starting off in the 50s for the most part this morning. Everybody now in the 50s, from around 55 all the way up to about 58, 59 degrees. So maybe a lightweight jacket again this morning if you're heading off to work. Forecast calling for temperatures to rise up into the upper 60s by 10 o'clock and then upper 70s, close to 80 degrees for highs today around 3 o'clock with northeasterly winds between about 5 and 10 miles per hour. No rain today, no rain for the weekend. Matter of fact, most of next week looks dry as well. We'll have your 7-day forecast for you a little bit later on this morning.
Now to more from the White House after President Trump announced he and First Lady Melania Trump have contracted the coronavirus. The president tweeted late last night, "The First Lady and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." The First Lady then tweeted a short time later saying, "As too many Americans have done this year, the president and I are quarantining at home after testing positive for COVID-19. We are feeling good, and I have postponed all upcoming engagements. Please make sure you are staying safe, and we will get through this together." The news comes just hours after we learned that one of the president's top aides, Hope Hicks, tested positive for the virus. She spent time in close proximity with the president and First Lady this week, and with more, here's Alex Perche.
This morning, the coronavirus pandemic reaching the Oval Office. President Trump tweeting overnight, "The First Lady and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." The First Lady adding, "As too many Americans have done this year, the president and I are quarantining at home. Please be sure you are staying safe, and we will get through this together." The White House physician saying both are well and they plan to remain at home within the White House. Late Thursday, President Trump announced plans to quarantine after one of his closest advisors, Hope Hicks, tested positive for the coronavirus. Sources telling ABC News Hicks is experiencing symptoms. The president saying this on Fox News.
You know Hope very well. She's fantastic, and she's done a great job. But it's very, very hard when you are with people from the military or for law enforcement, and they come over to you and they want to hug you and they want to kiss you because we really have done a good job for them. And you get close and things happen.
She had traveled with the president multiple times this week, including that trip to Cleveland Tuesday for the first presidential debate. Sources also telling ABC News Hicks tested positive the following day. President Trump mocked Joe Biden for wearing a mask at that debate.
I don't wear a mask like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
He's also admitted to downplaying the virus and has held rallies that defy his own White House coronavirus guidelines. The president just said this on Thursday.
We're on track to develop and distribute a vaccine before the end of the year, and maybe substantially before. And I just want to say that the end of the pandemic is in sight.
Throughout this pandemic, more than 7 million people have been diagnosed with the coronavirus in the U.S., and more than 207,000 have died. Another question going forward is, what does this do to the Trump campaign? The White House released a revised schedule for this weekend. That controversial rally scheduled for Wisconsin has been canceled. Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
Governor Greg Abbott tweeted out his support for the president this morning, saying he's lifting up prayers for the president and First Lady, saying may God's healing powers touch them and strengthen them and raise them up. This, of course, a developing story that we will continue to follow for you throughout the day on air and on our 12 News Now app. Meanwhile, we are now just 32 days away from the November election, and Governor Greg Abbott issuing a new order. He says it will enhance ballot security, but others disagree. Effective today, mail-in ballots that are delivered in person by voters must be delivered to a single location in each county. That location will be designated by a county's early voting clerk. Now, the governor says we must take extra care to strengthen ballot security protocols throughout the state. But his critics claim it's an effort to suppress the vote. One analyst suggests it may affect voters on both sides.
I do think its initial effort was to suppress Democratic voter turnout, make it hard for people who are voting by mail, those are Democrats, and takes away from the Republican effort to poll watch and verify. Now they're left with what? Nothing to watch and nothing to verify.
Stein believes this might push more people to vote early and in person. And a reminder for you, early voting begins Tuesday, October 13th. There are still a few uncertainties about what this year's election may hold, but one thing is for sure, Texas voters will not have the option of voting for a straight ticket. A federal appeals court ruling it's just too close to the election to make changes now. Democrats had sued to restore the option in March, citing long Super Tuesday lines in Houston. And there are now just 3 days left for you to register to vote. The deadline, October 5th. To get a look at our election guide, text us the word VOTE to 409-838-1212. Now to your morning rush. Bridge City police have made an arrest in connection with a deadly crash that happened in June. 23-year-old Jared Watkins posted a $100,000 bond after being arrested and charged with intoxication manslaughter. 20-year-old Jillian Blanchard died after police say Watkins hit her car head-on along FM 1442 in Bridge City. While police were at the scene, they were notified that 45-year-old Robert Jackson was also hit and killed by a car a few miles away on Ferry Drive. Family members of Blanchard and Jackson claim that the crashes are related. The Orange County Courthouse has opened its doors again. The courthouse shut down earlier this year for COVID precautions, but when it opened back up, Hurricane Laura swept through. If you plan to visit, be advised there is ongoing construction and only the back door is open to the public. Developing this morning, we now know the name of the victim who died in Wednesday night's hit and run. It happened on I-10 6 miles west of Beaumont. Troopers say 41-year-old Juan Hernandez Jr. was walking on the eastbound shoulder when he was hit by an unknown car. DPS was able to recover these pieces from that car, and you can see what looks like a fender and pieces of the vehicle's lights. If you have any information that can lead to the identification of the car or its driver, call the Beaumont DPS office. In consumer news, local gas prices have remained stagnant this week as prices at the pump remained at $1.89 a gallon. But it's expected to go down in the coming weeks, according to AAA. Drivers in Texas have been paying under $2 a gallon for the longest stretch since 2005. And those are your top headlines. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at some safety tips for Halloweening this year during the pandemic. The time now, 6:08.